Hi class, welcome to History 113. I'm your instructor, Professor John Parks. And this class is a survey to U.S. history starting from Christopher Columbus in 1492, going all the way to the U.S. Civil War. And in case you're wondering, I like to start for our e-lectures, just to be a little silly, I guess, with some theme music that has some relationship to the thing we're talking about. So anyway, I want to use this lecture as a brief intro to go over the syllabus, something we normally do in class, but and also give you some explanation why this class is even worth taking, why bother listening to me, and all that. So first of all, this is an image of me, just so you know who I am if you ever see me on campus. I came up to Lehigh Valley about 10 years ago. I'm in the middle of working on a PhD, studying my focus is what's called early modern British history, particularly also involving its empire. So I like, as I wrote down here, I like history. I spend a lot of time reading it. I read a lot of different kinds of history: ancient history, medieval history, modern history, everything from China to the United States to Europe, Africa, etc. Particularly with a focus on politics and religion. Also, right, in case you were wondering, one of my interests is my daughter, and so that's why there's a Minnie Mouse in the background. I'm not just a weirdo. Anyway, that's who I am. If you feel free to share some information about yourself with me, that'd be cool too, but no pressure. Don't worry about that. Normally, I like to do a little shtick just explaining what history is, right? This is a little bit heavy conceptually, so I don't expect you to quite understand what I'm talking about, but if you can follow along the best you can, that's okay. Right, so what is history, right? Is it just a collection of random names, dates, and facts, right? No, right? I'm sorry if you've ever been kind of put through that ringer with a really boring teacher. I mean, maybe you'll find me boring. I can't promise you anything, but maybe you've been put through the ringer where you're just forced to memorize names and facts and dates, and that's all that matters, right? Putting them in order, filling in multiple choice bubble tests, all that, right? You're not going to have any of that in this class, right? I'm going to expect you to try to learn what you think is relevant. But just like in real life, right? I'm going to hope that you think this class is worthwhile to think through some things. Maybe you'll learn a couple of bits and pieces, right? But in real life, you're never going to be tested, on the fly like some kind of Jeopardy question. What's the answer to this particular thing, right? You'll always have availability to access your textbook, to access your notes. What I'm more interested in is your ability to think through problems. And so that's really what history is. At its basis, right, history assumes the existence of change over time, right? It means societies rise, societies fall, right? Individuals change, right? You can look at your own life in terms of history, right? You're not the same person you were when you were 12, but in the same sense, you are the same person. So right, what stayed the same? What's different? And you claim, right, there's a continuity of identity. You're the same person, and yet the way you interact with the world is very different, right? And part of that is not always of your making, right? I mean, most of you probably have no recollection of life before the internet, right? You're all born after the internet. You're all born after September 11th, right, 2001, when the Twin Towers fall, and that changes the course of American history, right? You're all kind of in the process. You're born, thrown into the world in the mix of things. And the point of studying history is just to try to get a sense of what things are staying the same, what things are changing, why do things change, and I mean, ultimately, coming down to the bottom, right? What does it mean, right? Is there a purpose to time? Is it going anywhere? Are we just sort of floating through space aimlessly? Does humanity as a collective, or human beings individually, have a destiny? Do they have fate? Is there a purpose to human life? Right? These guys, I'm not going to get into all these questions, but this is part of understanding history. There's a philosophy to understanding history as a method, right? Because it presupposes the idea that man is historical, right? There are parts of our humanity that have not changed, which I won't get into all that. That's partially a biological question. That's partially a religious question. It's partially a philosophy question. But of course, all these disciplines, we're kind of artificially separating them to focus on different parts, but they're all mixed together. And in fact, I would say, if you don't understand history, you're going to be a terrible philosopher. You're going to be a terrible theologian. You're going to be terrible at economics. You're going to be terrible at sort of understanding the warp and woof of society, because people change, societies change, the way people organize and do things is different than the way it used to be. And studying history is not trying to find universal constants per se. It's not trying to say, okay, well, how are we ultimately going to be? But it's trying to understand bits and pieces, focusing really close to details, trying to understand, why did things end up the way that they are. So while history really won't be able, I mean, at least I'm not going to in this class, provide answers to what are we as human beings, what's our destiny, what's the future going to be like, right? It's not about answering those questions, but it provides a floor, a ground level, right? If you don't know where you came from, then I will bet you'll have no real clue on where you're going to go. If you have no idea what you are from the sense of what people used to do and the way people used to live, you're not going to really have a good sense of what you are now and what you might be in the future. So that's why history is super important, and what's really important about doing history is paying attention to what's called artifacts. So for our class, the only artifacts we're going to actually look at are texts, primary sources, things that people wrote in the time that they lived, referring to things that were going on, ideas that they were creating, relationships that they had, events that they participated in, all that sort of stuff. That's called an artifact. It also relates to things like archaeology, right? Finding bits and pieces of things, pots and pans and technology and houses and things people used to live in a different time, right? And it gives you a sense of not only how do people live, but how do people think, how do people feel. And so part of this class is about trying to understand that, and this is, I didn't put this on here, but this is an interesting word to think about, right? Part of it is about empathy. It's about the ability to understand why people in the past acted the way that they did, and also trying not to judge them too quickly, right? We're going to deal with events and people, trying to understand that you today might think are just sort of incomprehensibly evil, right? Like the phenomenon of race-based chattel slavery, right? How can one people enslave another people and think they're doing the right thing? And that's the point, right? We want to understand not just, oh, these are bad guys, these are evil, but you want to understand how they thought and felt through the world, because chances are people are going to look back on you and us in the past and are going to make similar judgments about things we think and feel. And the point isn't to just be relative, like, oh, okay, everyone is their own person, everyone's different, every time's different, so who are we to judge? No, I want you to be able to judge, but I want you to be able to judge rightly. I want you to be able to think about why people saw the things the way that they did, and then also try to explain, oh, okay, this made sense to them even though it's wrong, right? The point is not to just get rid of your judgment, right? It's not to say, okay, slavery was okay in the past, but now it's not okay. But we understand why something that we would consider evil, and I would argue is evil, holding people in bondage, treating them not as human beings but as form of property. This is just one example. There are going to be other forms, but this is the most graphic one for our class. The thing that most people associate as a sort of true evil in American history. Why did trying to get a better sense of just why this is wrong, but why did people think it was right? And in fact, maybe it will help you think about your own life and about your own decisions on how you might justify your own behavior when maybe it's actually the wrong thing. But I'm not going to get into any of that. It's just there are useful tools here in history, not just for doing an academic discipline, which I think will help you better understand the world, both understanding where you came from and where you might be going, or what's possible for you or your family or for your friends or for your community or your society, your nation, all that. But also at an individual level, trying to be able to think about yourself and think about your own decisions. So this course will hopefully teach you some critical thinking skills, whether or not you actually go on and study history. I hope that this class will interest you in American history, different kinds of histories, whether it's looking at individuals or looking at events or looking at societies. Hopefully you want to go on and keep reading, but even if you don't, hopefully this class will provide you some skills on how to think about things better, think about the world better. But then also, and this is the thing about artifacts again, being able to read a text carefully, right? Not reading it sloppily, right? It's about literacy. It's about, trying to be able to read something and not just comprehending the words on the page. So, being able to literally read it back to me, but actually understand what it means. What are these people talking about? What are these people arguing about? Why would they write this? What does this mean for the things that are going on at the same time? And that's just a useful skill of analysis. And then on top of it, right, if you do a little bit of empathy, this is also useful for anyone who lives with people, really, but anyone who has any kind of work that interacts with people, customer service, social work, trying to understand someone, not to say, oh, everything they think and say and do is okay, but just trying to understand them, so that you can kind of get a better understand, you understand them so you can understand what's going on better. So that's the kind of brief account of history and why it's important. I could go on and on and on about philosophy of history. I have lots of my own ideas about it. I think it's very important, right? So we're going to look at that throughout this class. Okay, now to the syllabus, right? Real quickly, this is all kind of automatic. The only course materials you need, you're going to get a textbook. It's called An Unfinished Nation by Brinkley. That's going to be emailed to you directly as an e-copy. It's factored into the tuition. It's going to cost $60. There's a whole section on the syllabus that's copy pasted from the representative for the company that sells the textbook about how do you use it, what does it do. If you don't want the textbook for $60, you can actually opt out. But for this class, you still need some kind of textbook. So if you're deciding to opt out, $60, you want your $60 back. That's fine with me. You just need to tell me that you're doing that, and you're going to need to tell me what textbook you're going to use. You're still going to need a textbook, whether it's an electronic one or physical one, doesn't matter, but you need to let me know. But otherwise, right, the textbook's automatically, you already paid for it by signing up for the class, so you already have it. And then for the other primary text you're going to read for the class, as well as everything else, that's free, and I'll send it to you directly. It'll be on Blackboard. It'll be in your email. I'll send it to you a couple different ways. All right, so the way grades work in this class, it's very simple, though it'd be easy to really screw this up if you don't pay attention and keep up with things. I'm not going to swamp you with busy work. There's not going to be assignments that you have to do every day or every week. There are some quizzes attached to the textbook, but those are mainly for your own benefit to sort of test yourself, which, I'll recommend that if you find it useful, because when doing the essays, right, and I'll get to that, the exams, it's going to require you to be kind of pretty familiar with some of the ideas, right? It would be a kind of waste of time if you have no idea what's going on. So sometimes doing the quizzes in the textbook might be a way to just test yourself to see if you actually understood what you read. But you're not going to have to do any of that. Anyway, there's none of this weekly stuff. Sometimes it'll be weekly assignments, but not every week we'll have an assignment, but there'll only be one assignment per week if there is one, besides reading and watching lectures for the class. The grades are not weighted, and what that means is you're getting graded out of 100 points, right? 100 points is 100% in the class, right? So if you get an exam back and you got 18 out of 20, that means you lost 2% of your total grade, right? So you can easily keep track of basically where you are in the class. I'm not going to do any fudging. There's not any curved grades, right? I'm just trusting you to be able to think about these things and figure it out. So first, second, and final exam, right? That's super important. I'm not grading you on your attendance because most of this class is remote. But if you fall behind on the exams, right, you're done. So you might as well drop the class if you don't think you'll be able to do exams. And I'll get back to that later, what they are. But right, this is overwhelmingly 70% of your grade, and you want to keep up with that, right? And then the other part of your grade, the weekly assignments, which are not always weekly, but I'm calling them weekly assignments. That's going to be 30% of your grade. And the way it works, there are going to be 10 assignments over the class. Each assignment is worth 3 points, 3%. So if you do all of the weekly assignments and follow the instructions, you'll get a full 30%. And I'll explain IDs and text analysis, what that means. But if you do everything right, you'll get a full 30%, right? If you don't do parts of it, if you don't follow the instructions, then you're not going to get a full 30%. So just be mindful, right? And it's all, again, unweighted. So 100 points in the class, 100%. Each point is worth 1%. Half a point is worth half a percent. 10% is worth 10 points, right? It's very easy to calculate in your own mind, right? All right. Weekly assignments, right? So the first one I'm going to talk about are called IDs, which is what it sounds like. It's an identifier. The point of it is I want you to write a brief paragraph, right? 3 to 6 sentences, which might be a big paragraph for you. I don't know. I'm going to give you a group of 5 terms that are both in the textbook and discussed in the lecture. You're going to see it on Blackboard, and I'll also email it to you. And I want you to pick 3 out of those 5 terms, right? Each term is worth 1 point. And so for each of those terms, right, you're going to get a total of 3 points. Each of those terms, I want you to describe what the concept is. So if I say the concept is, let's just pick for an example, Christopher Columbus, right? That's not going to be one, but if it's Christopher Columbus, I want you to tell me what that is, right? Who is he, right? It's a person. Who is he? What did he do? Blah, blah, blah. Why is he, and then also, why is that important for themes in the class, right? So you're going to want to think about what the lecture was about. What is it trying to grasp? And so what is the importance historically, right? So in this case, right, Christopher Columbus, he was Italian. He ended up working for the King and Queen of Spain. He decides to go to India looking for spices on behalf of the monarchs, and then he finds America. Why is this important? Because Christopher Columbus sets off European exploration to get to the Americas. He's the first to discover and create relationships with Native Americans, and he establishes Spain's dominance as the first American empire, right? So that, I'm not saying that's even, a perfect answer, but that's kind of what you want to get at, right? You want to go through the concept and you want to understand other connecting bits and pieces from the lecture. So, as the class goes along, the way I'll grade it will be a little bit more tough. But if you just try to describe it and then also then try to connect it to different things in the class, you'll get a full point for each of those, for that concept, for that ID. And then if you do that for the 3 out of the 5 IDs, you'll get a perfect grade, right? And so when you submit this to me, or you're going to send this to my email, which is jparks. Sorry, this looks terrible. This is the way it's always going to look, and I'm just going to keep apologizing. jparks@northampton.edu. It's on the syllabus. I want you to email it to me within the time parameter right on the syllabus. It's going to tell you what day it's due at the latest. And I would prefer if you would send it as a Word document, right? If you use a Windows computer, Windows operating system, you should be able to get Word pretty easily. I think Northampton provides access to free copies of Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office, which comes with Word. If you don't have it, it's also acceptable if you write it in a Google Doc, or if you do use Notepad and send me a .text. That's okay. Preferably, it's a real hassle for me. Please do not send me .pages, which is Apple's word processor. You can get a Microsoft Word version that runs on Apple, and you can submit things that are .doc or .docx. But please don't send me .pages, because then I got to convert it, and it's a real pain. So please, if you can, remember that. I'm not going to punish you if you send me a .pages, but you're just making my life a lot easier, if you don't mind. All right. Also, the textual analysis. Textual analysis is different from IDs. It's going to require a little bit more work that week. Unlike IDs, I'm going to send you a separate text. So the first one of these assignments you're going to have to do, I'm going to have you read the Declaration of Independence. So I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to ask you to read it on your own time. And so most of this class is all on your own time besides the assignments that are due. You can watch the lectures whenever you want. You can send me these assignments at whatever point, right? There's no period of time where you have to sit down and actually do it. But of course, right, the downside is that it's on you. If you forget, if you don't schedule or pay attention to your time and block stuff out so you can actually do the work for the class, or you get distracted by other classes, by work, by family, right, all the other stuff, then you're going to easily fall behind. So perks of freedom and downsides of freedom. Perks of freedom, it's on you. You get to do it whenever you want, but then that means you still have to do it, and it's on you to actually go about and do it. So you got to be responsible for doing this stuff. All right, so textual analysis, I'm going to send it out. I want you to read it carefully. None of these texts are very long. They're never, I think the longest one I send you is about 20 pages tops, but that one's pretty easy to read. But I want you to read this stuff. I want you to send me same format, .docs or .doc in a Word document. I want you to send me a 10 to 16 sentence analysis of the text, basically trying to explain what is the text actually arguing, what's the context for them writing it, why did they write it, and how this connects to specific themes. Now this is a very general outlay, right? Each text that you're going to look at, I'm going to send you very specific questions to ask. I'm going to send you 3 questions. If you answer each of those questions in a proficient way, which means paying attention to the text, actually citing it, having an insightful reflections, demonstrating that you've actually read the textbook, that you've actually listened to the lectures, you're paying attention to what I'm trying to say and do, then you'll get a full score. 3 points. It'll be 3% of your grade that you just locked down. But right, just pay attention to the specific questions I ask for each text, and if you have any difficulties with it, if you don't know what I'm looking for, if you don't understand a question, please feel free to email me. All right, and that applies to anything. If there's anything about this that doesn't make sense, or you're confused about the syllabus, you're confused about the class, you're confused about the essay exams, right, just let me know. Now finally, like I said, the exams are essay format, which means you got to, part of this class, there's not any kind of multiple choice. No, I'm not grading you for being able to memorize random facts. Rather, remembering those facts, being able to integrate them into a chronology in your head. When did this happen? When did that happen? Why is this important? Who's this person? All that stuff, right? That's on you to kind of integrate that, think about it, and redeploy it for these essays, right? They're going to ask you kind of broad conceptual questions about events, about social institutions, big things, right? And I'm going to ask you to be able to sort of take all the stuff that you read in the textbook and in the primary sources and in the video lectures and integrate it into an argument, right? I don't look particularly hard for how well you write. Now, obviously, I would like you to write in complete sentences. That doesn't sound stupid and kind of incoherent, but I'm not going to grade you on whether your prose is very flowery and that it's like some work of Shakespeare or something. No, I want you to be able to demonstrate to me that you've actually thought about this stuff and that you can make an argument, right? If I ask a question, which might be on an exam, I might ask a question like, what caused the American Revolution? What are some of the things that led up to the American Revolution? And do you think it was inevitable? Right? So I'm going to ask you to pull all the things you've heard, all the things you've read, all the things you've thought about and taken notes on, and be able to give me an argument saying, these are the things that caused the American Revolution, this, and this, and tell me why those things are important, right? Don't just give me a list of random things, or you got to be able to integrate it and say, this helped cause the American Revolution because it did this to society. It angered these people. It made this group turn against this group. It made this person more influential than they would have otherwise been, and they led a group to oppose or support X or Y, right? That's how I want you to think and argue about this stuff. If you don't know how to argue, if you don't know exactly what to do with these questions, if it's too hard, if it's too comprehensive, like, oh man, I don't even know where to start, again, feel free to email me. I will help you work through it. Now, each of these essay exams, they're going to have multiple questions. Each question, you can kind of break it up into how many points the exam's worth. So if the exam's worth 20% or 20 points, each question is worth 10 points or 10%. And then the final exam's got 3 questions, so each of those questions worth 10%, and it adds up to 30%, right? And for each of these exams, I'll send out feedback. And also, finally, right, each exam question is going to have a word count. I don't want you to worry about the word count per se in this sort of manic, like, oh no, I wrote 801 words. Is he going to dock points for that? No, I'm not, right? In fact, I'd rather you write more than less. And that goes to all the other assignments. If you write more than 16 sentences about the textual analysis, if you write more than 6 sentences for an ID, that's fine. Go nuts. I don't care, right? In fact, I think it might just demonstrate you know more. But I'm not going to punish you if you don't write more, but that's just to give you a ballpark. When it comes to thinking about word limits, at least for this class, I want you to think about them as a speed limit, right? If you're driving on 22, you're driving on 33, you're driving on 78, whatever, right? And the speed limit says 65 or 75. It would be bad if you drove 30 miles per hour in a 75 mile per hour lane, right? You'll probably cause a car accident. It'll be a disaster, right? So don't undersell the word count, right? If you write 350 words for a 700 word essay, I guarantee you the best grade you're going to get is a D, right? Because there's no way, unless you're some kind of masterful genius that's very concise with his words or her words, you're not going to be able to provide enough detail to answer the question effectively. Of course, right, if that's what you want to do, you're just trying to submit something so you don't get a total 0 on an assignment, and you want, okay, I'll get 50-60%, then okay, let's do that. But then, just like driving on the highway, don't be surprised if people swerve out of the way and yell at you while you're driving. Again, but in the way we functionally drive, if you drive, if you're on 78 and you're going, it says 75 miles per hour, you can go, right? Most people are driving 80, 85, 90, right? Okay, cops depends on what time of the month, right? But cops probably won't pull you over if you're going 80, 85, 90 in a 75 mile per hour lane. But if you're going 140, that's a problem. So please, think about, part of the thing I'm testing you on is how concise you can be, so you're not just babbling on, listing random things, train of thought, stream of consciousness type writing, right? I don't want that. So if it says 800 words for this essay and you write 2,000 words, that's way too much, right? So you need to cut back. But if you write 805, 850, 900, 1,000, even 1,100 or 1,200 words, I'm not going to punish you for that. That's perfectly fine. And finally, and there's a section on the syllabus, the most important thing for this class, really, that will really mess you up is plagiarism, right? And especially because this is an electronic class, everything's online, there's never a moment where I can stand over you and watch what you're doing, which I'm not. I'm not your dad, I'm not your mom, I'm not your babysitter, right? I'm going to trust you to be able to get everything done on time. I'm going to trust you to be able to schedule stuff, and I'm going to trust you to follow basic ethics, right? What is plagiarism, right? At the very minimum level, right? Plagiarism is taking someone else's work and pretending it's your own, right? It's considered an intellectual crime, right? This will ruin people's career if you plagiarize stuff. Now, of course, there are famous people who've committed this thought crime. I won't get into all that. But in this class, there's zero tolerance, right? You plagiarize, you're done. You might as well drop the class. It doesn't matter what it's on, right? If you plagiarize for an essay exam, right, which is big, or if you plagiarize for an ID because you just decided to copy paste some shit from Wikipedia, right? Don't bother doing anything else in the class, right? I'm just going to fail you. It doesn't matter how much more work you do, it doesn't matter how much you beg, I'm just going to fail you, right? I will tell you if you plagiarized so that you know that you're doomed, but there's no tolerance. So you need to be really, really careful about what you do, right? Plagiarism is lying. It reflects that you're lazy, you don't care. You're just going to steal other people's works and try to pass it off as your own because you don't have the time or energy to think about it for yourself, right? And that's lying to me is in this form is the biggest sin you can commit in this class. So that's why no tolerance. Like if you're late on something, maybe we can work out a deal, but I need you to contact me. If you do a poor job, I appreciate you trying. Even if your thoughts aren't coherent, maybe you haven't really understood the material. Maybe actually you didn't get around to reading or listening to all the lectures. Right? That's fine. You're not going to get a great grade. You're not going to get a perfect grade, but you'll survive. But if you plagiarize, you're finished. So again, I'll go over real quickly. What is plagiarism? It's taking something and passing it off on as your own. So the two main forms of this that I've seen is copy pasting. Some people are so lazy they don't have time to even try to put something in their own words. They're just going to literally rip it off of a website and just copy and paste it. And most of the time, it's kind of obvious that it's not your work, right? You copy and paste something, and surprise, right? You're using words that you don't actually know the meaning of. You're using concepts that you weren't able to demonstrate in another format, right? So I'm just good. If I find it, I'll tell you, and then you're done. So do not copy paste. In fact, I will tell you, right, do not use websites. Now, if you want to read stuff for your own interest, if you want to read some Wikipedia, if you want to Google some stuff, whatever, and read it to try to get a better handle on it, right? I'm even going to tell you in the class sometimes, hey, you can look this up, check this thing out, right? I'm not going to blame you if you do that, but do not bring it into any of the essays. Do not copy paste, and then also, if you do cite something, do not fail to include that citation, right? If you say, oh, blah, 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 here's some facts, right, but you didn't actually cite it, and I'm going to ask you, please only cite from the textbook. Please only cite from lectures. Please only cite from primary sources. And, when the essays come up, I'll kind of go back to this and re-explain it. But if you do not include a citation, but it's clear that you're citing something, or if you put a false citation, which I haven't really seen that many people try to do that here, but if you made up a footnote or you made up I'll tell you, I don't have real specific instructions for how I want you to cite, right? If you just put something in parentheses, you write, I cite blah 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 from X, and you just put it in little citation brackets. That's fine, but I need you to do that, right? If you don't do that, then that's plagiarism. If you copy paste things, that's plagiarism. In fact, one semester I had a guy, he copy pasted something with a footnote in it that was hyperlinked to the website. So I didn't even have to try to think about it or look it up, right? I just clicked on the footnote and boom, there it was. There's the text that he stole. I mean, it was wild. So obviously don't be dumb like that, but please do not commit plagiarism because you're just throwing away money for no apparent reason, right? Just because, you think you're clever or you're lazy or, whatever. If you have any questions, you say, oh no, Professor Parks, I don't really know. Is this plagiarism? Did I do this right? Please just ask me. I will help you. I will help you figure it out. Just don't be stupid about it because, it's the last minute and you don't know how to do something because you didn't do any work. Right, just take the F, take the 10, take the 50% grade by just submitting something that you threw together at the last minute. Take that. Don't destroy the whole class, right? Otherwise, you just flush thousands of dollars down the drain for really no good reason. All right, so this was just a brief intro. If you have questions on anything in it or anything on the syllabus or anything on the schedule, just let me know. And we'll go from there. All right, thanks. Peace out, guys. I'll see you later.